In this video, I'll show you the easy way to replace the battery in your Honda key fob and fix it if the buttons accidentally fall out. This is from a 2022 Pilot. I'll show you how to change the battery the easy way, and then I'll also show you how to recover from what happens if you, like I did, you bobble it and you end up with this mess. So this is worst case scenario, and it's really not that hard to recover from. I'll show you everything you need to do, but we're going to start off with the simple battery change on this fob. The fob requires a CR2032 battery, which is a 3-volt lithium battery. The batteries in my fob lasted about 3 years. To change a battery, first release the key. On the logo side of the fob, there is a switch. You press that switch, and then you lift out on the key ring, and that exposes the key. Hey, did you know that you could use this to unlock and start your vehicle if the battery in your fob goes bad? Well, you can. So with that key removed, we're now going to use this key, and we'll place it right here in between those two pry points. We'll push down a little bit. It'll slide in, and then we'll give it a twist, and that will separate the clamshell, allowing us to get in there and get to the battery. Very carefully, I'm going to put it with the button side down, logo side up, and I'm going to carefully lift up. And what we want to do is leave the circuit board down in its case, and now we're going to remove the battery. These are sort of springy clips. We don't want to pry up from this side. There are some permanent tabs. These are the hold downs. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking this plastic spudger stick and I'm going to wedge it under the battery on that side. And hey, that came out even easier than I thought it would. I'll just show you how it's going to go back in. You put this end in first, and then that presses down into those two clips. What you can do if it's being stubborn, with a little pressure under there, just take a little screwdriver and you can pull these little ears back. You don't want to snap them. And then once you clear those little plastic ears, then the battery comes right out. I'm just going to use some non-conductive tweezers to remove the battery, just to keep any hand oils off of the battery. Have my new battery, pop it open. We're going to slide it in, first putting it under these two tabs. Push it in. I'll use my finger for this part. Push it in, push it down, and you should be good to go. So now we just want to line up the other side of the clamshell. When you're sure it's lined up, snap it into place. There we go. Look along the seam, make sure the seam is good, and it is. And now we can take the key and put it back into its holder. Should snap in place, and you are ready to go. Okay, now worst case scenario, what happens if, when you're doing it, you bumble like I did, and you end up with parts all over the place like this? If you have another key to use for reference, you can put it next to your work area, and you need to match the buttons to look like this key. But there's an order that it has to go in. First, let me show you the different parts. Here is my key module, and I already have the new battery inserted there, but I just need to reassemble this now in the case. First, orient your two remotes so they are going the same direction. On the shell, there's a curved end, and that aligns with the curved side of the circuit board. If the rubber dust cap cover came off of your remote, you want to put it back on. And so this just lays on top. So the module's now covered. We're going to put that aside, and what we need to do is we need to assemble the buttons in the case. What I suggest you do is take all of these little chiclet buttons that fell out, and we want to basically duplicate what we are seeing over here. I've laid out all of the buttons the way it appears in the remote. I'm going to put this aside, or I can still see it, and I'm going to move the empty case over, making sure that the curve of the empty case still follows the layout and orientation of my example here. So now we have to put these buttons back into the case in a particular order. So I'm going to start at the top, and we'll drop the lock button in. There are little pins that stick up out of the back of this case, and the tabs on these buttons sit in between these pins. Now we'll put the unlock button in place. We'll just drop him in there. Let him sit between those tabs. Next, I'm going to place the hold button down at the bottom. Move him around until he drops into his home. Next thing we need to do is we need to take this little bridge that says hold. This goes in next. And you'll see a little cutout right there. And you'll see there's a little tongue here. That tongue sits in that cutout. The tongue goes into that little hole, and these little arms straddle and hold in place the lock and the unlock button that are under it. Now we'll put in the remote start button. This one goes into its place, and you have to make sure that the tab is now resting on that little bar that you could see over here, that little bar that says hold. And finally, the lift gate button, he needs to go in here, but I found that he kind of needs to be slid under that little cross piece. Great. So everything's in place now. So here's my button module. Just make sure that the rubber dust cover is still on it and centered, with the curved end of the module facing the curved end of the clamshell. We're now going to very carefully put this straight into its shell, and working our way around the edges, press it into place. That battery's already been changed. Just going to do a little visual inspection, making sure to hold this together so it doesn't fall back out. We'll turn it over. We'll look at our buttons, make sure your buttons are all facing forward and in the correct orientation. You can compare that to your original if you like. And we're looking good. So now we just need to carefully line up the rest of the case. Wiggle it until it settles, and then snap it down into place like we did on the first remote. And usually they don't all clip into place at the same time, so you can see it's a little bit out right there, but as long as it's lined up, you should be able to just give it a squeeze and work your way around the remote. Now all we need to do is reinsert our key back into the secret holder. There we go. And we are good to go. A pair of freshly batteried Honda key fobs. Oh, and by the way, if you can, don't just drop the old lithium batteries in the trash. Try to recycle. Where I live in the United States, you can bring discarded batteries to Staples. So I just keep a bin, and when I get enough batteries, then they have free recycling. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the place below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Have a good one.
I fixed it.